another reason to turn off televisions and radios and computers and smartphones on Shabbat. You get an extra day of life before finding out that Gabby Giffords and 18 others have been shot, and 6 have died, including a 9-year-old girl, intrigued enough by politics and the democracy in which we live to want to meet an actual congresswoman. Last weekend, I wish I'd taken 2 days off. Then I could have lived 2 more days of my life before finding out not only about the Tucson shootings, but also that Debbie Friedman had died. Debbie Friedman, the one whose healing we prayed so hard for last Friday night. We were not alone. Debbie Friedman, the one who taught us to pray for healing, and whose words helped us so many times right here, from the AIDS crisis on, to find ways to gently hold ourselves and our loved ones as we waited for healing, or at least for gentle passage from this life to the next one. Debbie was good at teaching us about transitions. Her melody for Havdalah, as you've all mentioned earlier, taught many of us not only to be more mindful of Shabbat, but to appreciate that moment of transition each week when the holy day of the Sabbath, the day of rest, the day to stop and breathe, gently transitioned into the next day and all the ordinary days of the week. And when Debbie and Savina Tubal, the memory of both their lives are a blessing to us all, wrote their now legendary, in certain circles anyway, their legendary song Lechi Lach, and sang it right here in this room, in this sanctuary, the very first time it was sung. They did so as a way of teaching us about the transition, the passage into what Savina called the age of wisdom, on the occasion of Savina's 60th birthday during the week of the Torah portion in Genesis called Lech Lecha. Savina and friends right here in this room, in this sanctuary, created a ritual to celebrate coming into a new decade, a different decade, coming into a different age, a different stage of life. Lechi Lach, they sang, right here, quoting and feminizing the words God spoke to Abraham, Lech Lecha, go to a place that I will show you. Among the things Debbie Friedman and Savina Tubal wanted to teach us is that God is with us in all the passages, all the transitions of our lives. Debbie taught us a lot about another passage too, the one we read this week in Parshat Shalach, the passage of the Israelites from slavery into freedom, the passage of the Israelites from the dangerous shore of the Red Sea to the other side of that same sea. Her song that Yuval and Fran and Tamara sang a little bit of just now, Miriam's song, picked up on a short passage of this week's Torah portion that, until Debbie Friedman came along and highlighted it for us, few Jews really noticed it. The verse reads, then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand. See the timbrel in our windows? Half of a timbrel in our windows. And all the women went out after her and danced with timbrels. And the women, sang Debbie, dancing with their timbrels, followed Miriam as she sang her song. Here on the far shore of the sea, newly liberated, who noticed until Debbie Friedman came along that women danced and sang and played musical instruments, even way back in biblical times? It says so in Torah. She not only highlighted for us the moment of transition from slave to free person, she helped liberate a generation and then another and maybe even another so far of Jewish women, gave us voices and helped us open our own eyes to see that we had indeed been in the story all along, been part of the story of the Jewish people, even sometimes leaders in the transitional moments of that ongoing story. Who knew? What power that gave us, what encouragement to go out and do it again, or rather to continue what we had started. And Debbie did the same sort of empowering, encouraging, not just of women and feminists and lesbians, but also of children, Jewish children at summer camps and youth groups and synagogues, and people with physical and emotional challenges. Of her many healing prayers and healing services, her way of singing to us and with us encouraged so many. And is there a cantor or cantorial soloist or a song leader or just Jewish song singer around today of any gender, at least in any remotely liberal circle or in Sfat, who hasn't been influenced by her music and her work? Whether knowingly or unknowingly, it's doubtful, truly. You want proof? Not only did hundreds of people attend Debbie's funeral this past Tuesday in Santa Ana, but when Felicia was watching it live stream on her computer here in the office, she noticed that she was doing so literally with 7,000 other people. You know how it tells you how many people are watching a live stream? 7,000 other people at the time it was happening. And who knows how many like me saved it to watch later on. Perhaps the sweetest, saddest coming together of the week's events was that last week on Shabbat after Gabby Giffords was shot. Members of her synagogue in Tucson, Congregation Chavarim, gathered to sing Debbie Friedman's Mishaberach for Gabby and for Debbie. That both of their lives hung in the balance at the same moment for those few hours of Shabbat and on into the early hours of Sunday morning. Reminds us about the power and purpose of prayer, even specific kinds of prayer, like a Mishaberach that asks for healing of someone in particular. If you are someone, and so many of us are, who offers prayers for healing, you already know that praying for healing doesn't always bring that desired result. Some live, some die. Last weekend put that reminder before us in an up-close and personal way. And yet Debbie Friedman would be the last person to give up on prayer. Though she believed in the efficacy of prayer, in its power, in God, she was under no illusions that prayer alone cures. Healing and prayers for healing are about something else than getting up out of a hospital bed and back into life. Though wouldn't we all be in a happier mood tonight if that had happened this week? They are about strengthening us all and connecting us to one another and to God and helping us find fortitude whether the person lives or dies. For now, this week, while we continue our prayers for healing for Gabby Giffords and all the others worldwide in need of healing, we also turn our attention to yet another passage, another kind of transition that Debbie Friedman, even in death, because of her death, is teaching us this week, or reminding us anyway, right when we need it, that one can pass gently, if reluctantly, if too soon, much too soon, from life into death. And that, do we really need reminding? The length of a life is never the measure of the quality of a life, nor is one's time on earth related to the quantity or quality of the blessings one leaves behind. As we bid farewell to Debbie and 9-year-old Christina Taylor Green and the others murdered in Tucson, as we remember this weekend the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., whose work in partnership with God lives on, though he was shot down at age 39. We remember, too, Savina and Debbie singing God's words, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Achilach.